I was looking over the opening paragraph of Chapter 3 last night.
Oh, the section on human reproduction.
Yeah, exactly. And I realized I have been reading it completely wrong my entire life.
Is that right?
I mean, I always thought it was just introductory filler. You
Yeah.
know, like the kind of polite preamble a textbook gives you before getting to the actual heavy lifting.
Right, the stuff you just skim over.
Exactly. But I started reading the exact words provided in our source text today. And it completely shifted how I view this entire subject.
In what way?
It isn't just a list of terms. It is the absolute foundation. So we are bringing you right into this study session with us today.
Absolutely.
If you are preparing for a massive exam, or, if you just want to understand the sheer engineering marvel of the human body, you are in the right place.
You really are. Welcome, everyone.
We are doing a deep dive into the foundational blueprint of human reproduction, taking a single stack of source material, the core introductory text and structural outline of Chapter 3, and honestly just tearing it down to its studs.
It is a privilege to sit down and unpack this with you. What's fascinating here is that we aren't just reading a list of biological definitions today.
Definitely not.
As a mentor who has spent over 15 years dissecting the ways examiners test this material, specifically for highly competitive arenas like Neet, I can tell you that an introductory text like this is a masterclass in strategic design.
Yeah, it really hides in plain sight.
It does. Our mission today is to reverse engineer the exact blueprint of human survival. We are going to look at this text not as passive readers, but through the highly critical lens of a competitive exam.
Because every word matters.
Exactly. Every single noun and verb is a potential trap, a hidden clue, or a foundational concept waiting to be weaponized in a multiple-choice question.
I love that framing. And to get us into that analytical mindset, I want you to visualize something with me.
Go for it.
Think of human reproduction like the most high-stakes, highly choreographed relay race in the entire universe.
A relay race. Okay, I like where this is going.
But here's the catch. The baton doesn't just get passed from runner to runner. The baton actually transforms at every single handoff.
Right.
It changes its fundamental state, its shape, its entire biological purpose, all while the track itself is shifting underneath it.
That is a powerful image.
That is what we are looking at in this text. We are tracking a transforming baton in a biological relay race.
That analogy holds up incredibly well under scrutiny, actually. When we strip away the initial intimidation factor of a biology textbook, we are left with the core essence of the topic.
The ultimate why.
Yes. Why does this machinery even exist? The source material cuts straight to the heart of the matter in its very first sentence, establishing two fundamental biological principles about humans.
The two big ones.
The text states plainly, humans are sexually reproducing and viviparous.
And everything else hinges on that.
Everything else we will discuss today, every complex mechanism and anatomical structure, hinges entirely on the implications of those two words.
Let's hover over that for a minute. Sexually reproducing and viviparous. It reads so simply, but it sets the absolute parameters for the entire physiological system.
It truly does.
I mean, we aren't cloning ourselves, and we aren't laying eggs.
Let's push that a bit further. We always have to ask the ultimate biological question. What specific problem does this massive, resource-heavy biological machinery solve in nature?
Right.
The answer is found in the combination of those two concepts. Sexual reproduction exists to ensure the continuous mixing of genetic material.
You take half a blueprint from one individual and half from another.
Exactly. This genetic diversity is vital for the adaptability and ultimately the continuity of the species.
But there's a second part.
Right. The real game changer in this specific text, the word that dictates the entire anatomy of the human reproductive system, is viviparous.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because this is where the textbook language usually creates a barrier.
It does tend to alienate students.
Yeah. Viviparous. I know it means live birth, but the way you're framing it, it sounds like an evolutionary defensive strategy.
It is the ultimate defensive strategy.
Right.
Being viviparous means bringing forth live young that have developed inside the body of the parent. This exists to solve a very specific, ever-present danger in the natural world.
Which is?
Vulnerability.
Oh, I see.
If you think about the alternative oviparity, or laying eggs, you are placing your offspring in an external environment.
Out in the open.
Right. They are subjected to predators, sudden temperature fluctuations, pathogens, and unpredictable environmental hazards.
So viviparity is like a shield.
The viviparous strategy says The external world is too hostile for this early developmental stage. We are going to internalize the entire process.
That makes so much sense.
It requires the safe, highly regulated internal development of offspring.
Imagine if we just laid eggs.
Yeah.
Think about how completely different our daily lives, our biology, and this textbook would
That'd
be.
be a completely different manual.
If humans just dropped a calcified egg in the sand or built a nest for it, we wouldn't need half of the biological steps listed in this chapter.
Not at all.
We wouldn't need a uterus designed for expansion. We wouldn't need complex placental interfaces. The massive complexity we are about to study is essentially the steep biological price we pay for the premium security of internal development.
That trade-off is the engine of the entire chapter. Because we are viviparous, because we mandate internal development, we require a highly specialized, incredibly complex internal factory.
And the text introduces that factory immediately.
Yes. The source text follows up those two foundational words, sexually reproducing and viviparous, with a dense block of biological terminology right in the first paragraph.
It's a heavy list.
Gametogenesis, insemination, fertilization, zygote, blastocyst, implantation, gestation, parturition.
And seeing all those words clustered together in paragraph 1 is usually where a student's eyes glaze over.
Oh, absolutely.
This feels like a deceptive wall of jargon. You know the words, but when they hit you all at once, your brain just categorizes it as stuff I need to memorize later.
Which is exactly the fatal error examiners are counting on.
They know we do that.
They bank on it. From a strictly neat focus, I cannot overstate the hidden weight of this introductory phrasing. This is a classic, highly predictable testing arena.
How so?
Students are so anxious to get to what they perceive as the hard science, the complex hormonal feedback loops, the detailed diagrams of the reproductive organs, that they rush past the opening premise.
They treat it like the terms and conditions on a software update. Just scroll to the bottom and click accept so we can start the app.
That is a brilliant way to put it. And in a competitive exam, treating the foundation like terms and conditions will cost you your rank.
Ouch.
Let me pull back the curtain on how an examiner looks at this text. In Neet, we frequently encounter assertion-reason questions.
Right, those are tricky.
These are not simple recall questions. They test whether you understand the underlying logical relationship between two facts.
The why behind the what.
Exactly. The assertion might be a statement about human biology, and the reason is the biological justification. These questions often hinge entirely on understanding that viviparity is the exact reason why the later stages mentioned in the text, specifically implantation and gestation, are absolutely mandatory in humans.
So if an exam asks a question where the assertion is that humans require a prolonged, complex gestation period with placental attachment, the underlying biological reason isn't just because we have a uterus.
Right.
The ultimate reason is tied to our viviparous nature.
You've hit the nail on the head. If you don't anchor your understanding there, you are trying to memorize a sequence without understanding the motivation behind it.
Viviparity is the motivation.
Once you grasp that, the entire sequence of reproductive events isn't just a list of random words. It is a logical, non-negotiable supply chain. The source material hands us a clear, 6-stage chronological roadmap to manage this internal factory.
Let's actually map that out. I want to build a highly logical mental map for everyone listening.
That's a great idea.
We aren't going to just read the list. We need to dissect why each mechanism must happen in this exact order. It's like a biological algorithm.
Building that structural mental map is non-negotiable for long-term retention. In a high-pressure exam hall, rote memorization shatters.
You just blank out.
You will second-guess yourself. Logical sequencing, however, holds up under stress. Let's walk through the exact sequence the text provides, treating it as a continuous narrative of biological necessity.
All right, let's start at the beginning. Step 1. The text defines the very first event as gametogenesis.
Right.
And it doesn't leave room for ambiguity. It explicitly defines this as the formation of gametes. It then immediately specifies sperms in males and ovum in females.
Correct.
Going back to our relay race analogy, this is the phase where the runners are actually manufactured and brought to the starting line.
You cannot run a race if the stadium is empty.
Exactly.
Biologically speaking, you cannot execute sexual reproduction without the production of gametes. Now, earlier we established that sexual reproduction means mixing genetic material. To do that, these gametes cannot be standard human cells. They have to be specialized. Though the text at this exact point just calls them gametes, any student preparing for this must inherently know that gametogenesis is the process of creating haploid cells.
Wait, let's pause and clarify haploid for anyone who might be rusty.
Sure.
A standard human cell has the full human blueprint, right?
Yeah.
But if you smash two full blueprints together, you'd have double the genetic material, which would be a biological disaster.
It would fail immediately.
So haploid means they only carry half the blueprint.
That is the perfect translation. Haploid comes from the Greek word meaning single or simple. These gametes, the sperm and the ovum, are carrying exactly half of the genetic instructions required to build a human.
They're incomplete by design.
Yes, they're waiting for their counterpart at the finish line. Gametogenesis is the incredibly complex manufacturing process of taking a standard cell and having its genetic payload to create these specialized runners.
The starting line.
This is the absolute starting line. Every subsequent event in this chapter is downstream of successful gametogenesis.
Which brings up a logistical nightmare, leading directly to step 2. You have these gametes, these half blueprints, but they are manufactured in two entirely different human beings.
A significant geographical problem.
Yeah. The text defines step 2 as insemination, the transfer of sperms into the female genital tract. So logically, we have formed the runners, but they're physically separated by open space. Step 2 is the mechanical geographical solution to get the runners onto the same physical track.
Notice the deliberate clinical precision of the language used in the source text. It does not use colloquial terms. It does not just say mating.
Right, it's very specific.
It says transfer of sperms into the female genital tract. In a biological context, this highlights a severe vulnerability. The male gamete must physically exit its host environment and relocate to the highly specific internal environment where the female gamete resides.
And going back to the oviparity versus viviparity idea, if we were fish, this step would look completely different, right?
Completely different.
Fish just release their gametes into the ocean and hope they bump into each other. External fertilization. But because humans are viviparous and require internal development, the fertilization must happen internally.
Therefore, insemination, the physical transfer into the female tract, is a mandatory prerequisite.
You are connecting the dots beautifully. The requirement of internal development forces the requirement of internal fertilization, which necessitates a physical delivery system.
Without insemination, the half blueprints remain forever separated. The biological supply chain breaks down at step 2.
But assuming the transfer is successful, the runners are now in the same stadium. That triggers step 3, fertilization.
The main event.
The text defines this as the fusion of male and female gametes leading to the formation of a zygote. This is our first massive transformation in the relay race.
The baton changes hands.
We go from two distinct independent gametes, the sperm and the ovum, each carrying their half blueprint, crashing together to become something entirely unprecedented. The zygote. The baton has changed shape.
This is the critical checkpoint of the entire endeavor. Fertilization is the exact moment the sexually reproducing mandate is fulfilled.
Because the genetics finally mix.
Yes. The two haploid cells fuse to create a diploid cell, a cell with the complete, newly mixed genetic blueprint. That single diploid cell is the zygote.
Ground zero.
It represents the absolute ground zero of a new individual. But we have to return to our foundational constraint. We are viviparous.
Right.
This single microscopic cell, this zygote, cannot just sit idle in the reproductive tract, nor can it be expelled into the outside world. It has to be nurtured, protected, and grown internally.
Which means it has to find a place to plug in.
Yeah.
And that brings us to step 4.
Pay close attention here.
I really want to slow down here because when I read this part of the text, I had to read it 3 times.
I will.
Step 4 is implantation. But the textbook is intensely, almost suspiciously specific about how it describes this sequence.
It absolutely is. Let's hear it.
Let me read it exactly as written. This step is followed by formation and development of blastocyst and its attachment to the uterine wall implantation.
All right. To everyone listening, whatever you are doing right now, whether you are driving, at the gym, or sitting at a desk, I need you to mentally highlight, underline, and circle what was just said.
Is that important?
High-yield concept alert. If you take absolutely nothing else away from our deep dive today, lock this into your memory. This exact sentence, this specific phrasing about the blastocyst, is the ultimate trap for students, and examiners build entire questions around exploiting it.
It's so deceptive. Because in step 3, you just read the word zygote at the end of fertilization.
Right.
Your brain is moving fast, you're taking a time test, and you naturally assume the thing that was just created, the zygote, is the thing that moves to the next step and plugs itself into the wall.
The human brain loves shortcuts, and test writers know this. The most common, devastating mistake students make is confusing the identity of the entity that actually attaches to the uterine wall.
It gets so many people.
Let me paint a picture of how this looks on exam day. You are on question 87, you are fatigued, and you see a multiple choice question asking you to define implantation. Option A will say something that sounds incredibly plausible to an untrained, rushing student.
What does it say?
It will read, implantation is the process where the zygote attaches to the uterine wall. And thousands of highly intelligent students will click option A, feel confident, and immediately lose their marks.
Because option A is a lie. The text explicitly states it's the formation and development of the blastocyst and its attachment. It is not the zygote attaching. The baton had to transform again before it was allowed to dock.
Let's dissect the timeline the text is demanding we understand. The zygote is formed at fertilization, but the text inserts two critical words before attachment occurs: formation and development.
It takes time.
The zygote doesn't just drift over and stick to the uterus. It undergoes a profound developmental phase. It begins to divide, to differentiate, meaning the cells start taking on specific roles and spatial organizations, until it becomes a structurally distinct entity known as a blastocyst.
It upgrades itself.
Exactly. It is this blastocyst, a multicellular structure that possesses the necessary biological tools to execute the attachment to the uterine wall.
So the zygote is essentially just the raw materials freshly mixed together. It doesn't have the Velcro yet.
Precisely.
It has to undergo development, turn into the blastocyst, grow the biological Velcro, and then it can attach.
That analogy works perfectly. This distinction between the single-celled zygote in step 3 and the developed multicellular blastocyst in step 4 is exactly what separates top-tier candidates from the rest of the pack.
It shows who's really paying attention.
It demonstrates to the examiner whether you truly comprehend the chronological biological transformations, or if you are just skimming words and blindly memorizing a list. The terminology is not there to confuse you. It is there to demand precision.
Okay, my mind is thoroughly blown by how sneaky that is, but it makes total biological sense. So the blastocyst successfully attaches to the wall. The internal factory is fully engaged and powered up. This seamlessly shifts us into step 5 gestation.
The long haul.
The text defines this simply as embryonic development. This is the marathon portion of our relay race. This is viviparity in full, undeniable effect, keeping the developing embryo protected, oxygenated, and nourished entirely inside the host.
Gestation is the prolonged payoff of the implantation process. Once the blastocyst is secured to the uterine wall, establishing that vital interface with the maternal blood supply, the entity finally has the massive influx of resources it needs to undergo the journey of embryonic development.
It needs a lot of fuel.
A tremendous amount.
Yeah.
It is the transition from a cluster of cells into a fully formed, complex anatomical organism. Every system, organ, and tissue must be synthesized during this window.
It's the ultimate internal 3D printing process. And once that process reaches its biological conclusion, we cross the finish line into step 6, parturition.
The final step.
The source text defines this as the delivery of the baby. The internal factory has completed its manufacturing cycle, the product is viable, and the offspring must now transition out of the protected internal environment and into the external world.
And with that, you have the complete 6-stage mental map. Let's review the architecture of it.
Sounds good.
Gametogenesis creates the haploid runners. Insemination transports the male runner. Fertilization fuses them into the diploid zygote. Implantation requires that zygote to develop into a blastocyst and anchor itself. Gestation is the period of massive internal resource allocation and growth. And parturition is the physical expulsion of the developed offspring.
It flows perfectly.
If you understand the logical necessity of each step, why you cannot have fertilization without insemination, or why gestation is biologically impossible if the blastocyst fails to achieve implantation, you never need to struggle to remember the order.
Because it just makes sense.
The uncompromising logic of human biology dictates the sequence for you.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. We just built this beautiful, logical, sequential timeline of events. It feels very clean and orderly. But the source text throws a massive counterintuitive reality check right after laying out this sequence.
It introduces the variable of time.
Yes, the text explicitly says you have learned that these reproductive events occur after puberty.
That single sentence acts as a massive biological kill switch.
Kill switch, right.
It is telling us that this entire complex factory, this elaborate 6-stage supply chain we just meticulously mapped out, sits completely dormant for the first decade or more of a human's life.
Just waiting.
The anatomical machinery is physically present in the body from birth, but the power grid is turned off. None of this. Not gametogenesis, not the hormonal cycles, nothing can initiate until the biological clock strikes puberty and the neuroendocrine system floods the body with the specific signals to boot up the factory.
That in itself is a fascinating mechanism of resource conservation for a growing child, but it was the very next sentence in the text that gave me a genuine whoa moment.
Let's hear it.
The textbook points out a striking, almost jarring contrast in how this biological clock operates between the sexes once it is turned on. It explicitly states, there are remarkable differences between the reproductive events in the male and in the female, for example. Sperm formation continues even in old men, but formation of ovum ceases in women around the age of 50 years.
This is a profound statement.
It really is.
The text is taking a moment to step back from the micro-level processes to highlight a massive, elegant, yet stark asymmetry in the biological design of the human species.
It's honestly kind of mind-blowing when you think about the sheer unfairness of the biological machinery.
How do you mean?
Let's look at gametogenesis again, the very first step. For the male reproductive system, this text tells us the factory essentially never shuts down once that puberty switch is flipped. It just keeps churning out sperms into old age.
The conveyor belt runs continuously.
Right, day and night for decades. But for the female reproductive system, the factory has a hard-coded, non-negotiable expiration date. The text is definitive. The formation of the ovum completely ceases around the age of 50.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals a deeper truth about the evolutionary allocation of resources and risk.
It's not just random trivia.
Not at all. The text isn't merely providing a trivia fact about human aging. It is highlighting two fundamentally different reproductive strategies running simultaneously within the same species.
It's like two different operating systems.
Exactly. The male reproductive system is designed for a continuous, high-volume, relatively low metabolic cost production of gametes. It operates on an infinite loop protocol post-puberty. The female system, however, operates on a highly guarded, finite economy.
So what does this all mean in terms of viviparity? Is the female system shutting down at 50 because the cost of internal development is just too high?
You are drawing the exact right conclusion. Remember our foundational word, viviparous.
The internal development.
The biological burden of gestation, the massive caloric requirement, the physical toll, the immunological complexities of harboring a developing embryo for 9 months falls entirely on the female biology.
It's a huge undertaking.
The female system isn't just producing a gamete. It is preparing the entire internal environment for a potential, massive, prolonged undertaking every single month. Evolutionary biology suggests that ceasing ovum production at a certain age protects the female from the extreme physiological demands of pregnancy at an age when the body's overall regenerative capacity is declining.
So it's basically a self-preservation mechanism.
It is a protective, programmed obsolescence of the reproductive capacity to preserve the life of the individual.
It really makes you appreciate the completely different operational realities of the two systems. The male factory is continuous and expansive. The female factory is finite and heavily regulated.
Very different realities.
And what's brilliant is that this textbook wants to ensure we understand that profound asymmetry right here in the introduction before it even begins to teach us the detailed anatomy of either system.
The authors are establishing the biological philosophies of the two systems before showing you the plumbing.
The philosophies before the plumbing. I like that.
And that brings us to an incredibly important, yet often overlooked skill for any learner, especially those in a hyper-competitive environment.
What's that?
The ability to read the roadmap of the text itself. Our source material provides us with the structural outline of the chapter, detailing sections 3.1 through 3.7. As a student, do you notice how deliberately this index is organized?
Yes. I was actually looking at the headings right before we started. It flows perfectly. Section 3.1 is the male reproductive system, and 3.2 is the female reproductive system.
The anatomy.
Then 3.3 is gametogenesis, and 3.4 is the menstrual cycle. After that, 3.5 is fertilization and implantation, 3.6 is pregnancy and embryonic development, and it finishes with 3.7, which is parturition and lactation.
Look at that structure.
When you look at it laid out like that, it perfectly, almost identically mirrors the chronological mental map we just built from the opening paragraph.
It is a flawless architectural blueprint. A well-designed, high-level textbook does not just throw information at you randomly.
It's structured with intent.
The structure of the table of contents itself is a teaching tool, a macroscopic view of the microscopic processes. Let's walk through how this educational journey is mapped for the student. The first distinct phase is understanding the factory layout. You cannot possibly understand a complex manufacturing process until you understand the machinery performing it.
Right, you need the blueprints.
Hence, the chapter begins with anatomy. 3.1 and 3.2 cover the physical structures of the male and female systems.
Right, you have to know what the machines look like, where the tubes connect, and what the organs are before you turn the power on. You can't learn how an engine runs if you don't know what a spark plug is.
A perfect analogy. Once the anatomical foundation is laid, the text moves to the processes. Section 3.3 is Gametogenesis, detailing the cellular division we discussed.
The haploid runners.
But notice how it pairs with 3.4, the menstrual cycle. These two sections describe how the male and female factories operate on a routine, ongoing basis to prepare for the possibility of reproduction. It covers the continuous creation of the male gametes and the cyclical preparatory changes in the female internal environment.
The routine maintenance before the big event?
Yeah.
And then we reach what we can call the culmination phase.
Where it all comes together.
The text starts bundling the final, highly transformative events together. Section 3.5 covers fertilization and implantation. That is the fusion of the runners and the attachment of the transformed blastocyst.
Right.
Then 3.6 is pregnancy and embryonic development, which is our massive gestation phase. And finally, 3.7 brings us home with parturition and lactation.
I want you to look very closely at how the text pairs concepts in these final sections. Fertilization is paired directly with implantation in section 3.5.
Okay, yeah.
This is not an accident. This reinforces the biological reality that from a functional reproductive standpoint, successfully creating a zygote is utterly meaningless if it does not lead to the blastocyst successfully implanting into the uterine wall.
Because it would just fail.
In the context of establishing a viable pregnancy, fertilization and implantation are an inseparable functional pair. One without the other is a biological dead end.
And I noticed that exact same logic applies to the very last section, 3.7. Lactation is paired directly with parturition.
Exactly.
It logically connects the physical delivery of the baby with its immediate critical nutritional needs in the external world. The internal factory completes its job and delivers the product, but a brand new external support system, lactation, must immediately power up and take over.
It is a seamless transition.
It's also deeply, beautifully interconnected. You survive the internal development, but you still need sustenance on the outside.
It is a masterpiece of logical sequencing. When you sit down to study complex material like this, you shouldn't just read the paragraphs linearly, you must read the structure.
Look at the big picture.
Let the index of the chapter serve as the skeleton for your own mental map. When you know where a piece of information lives within the broader architecture of the chapter, you understand its context, its prerequisites, and its outcomes.
This has been such a transformative way to look at what initially seemed like just a basic, dry, introductory text. We've pulled so much critical understanding, from the evolutionary pressures of viviparity to the microscopic traps of the blastocyst, out of just a few sentences.
That is the hallmark of genuine deep learning. It is the difference between memorizing a textbook and understanding biology.
Totally.
Before we wrap up this session, I want to crystallize this vast amount of information for everyone listening. Here is what you must remember.
Get your notes ready.
If you are walking into an exam hall tomorrow, or if you simply want to solidify this elegant biological system in your long-term memory, these are the 5 critical facts drawn directly from the text today.
Hit us with them.
Number 1, humans are viviparous. This means mandatory internal development, and it is the foundational evolutionary reason why the complex, resource-heavy processes of implantation and gestation even exist.
That's at the core.
Number 2, you must know the strict, non-negotiable sequence of events. Gametogenesis creates the gametes, which leads to insemination, which leads to fertilization, which leads to implantation, which is followed by gestation, and concludes with parturition.
A perfect timeline.
Number 3, and I am saying this with maximum emphasis to save you from the most common examiner trap. A single-celled zygote is formed at fertilization, but it is a multicellular blastocyst that actually attaches to the uterine wall during implantation. Do not fall for the zygote implantation trap. The zygote must undergo development into a blastocyst before attachment can occur.
That is going to save someone's exam score, I promise.
I hope so.
Ah.
Number 4, These reproductive events are strictly gated by time. They only initiate after the biological trigger of puberty.
The kill switch.
And number 5, remember the great biological asymmetry regarding resource allocation. Sperm formation continues continuously in old men, but ovum formation operates on a finite economy and ceases around age 50 in women.
All right, I love to distill things down. Let's do a speed round. Here is your 60-second sticky summary. Take a breath, clear your mind. Here we go.
Let's hear it.
Humans are live-bearing, so viviparous and sexually reproducing to mix genetics. The grand biological relay race only starts after the puberty switch is flipped. You make the specialized half-blueprint gametes, which is Gametogenesis. You move the male runner to the track, which is Insemination. You fuse those half-blueprints together into a single zygote, that's Fertilization. That zygote baton transforms, develops into a blastocyst, and docks into the uterine wall, which is Implantation. You grow the embryo internally, that's Gestation. And finally, you deliver the baby to the outside world, Parturition, immediately followed by lactation. And never ever forget, the biological clockmen keep running the sperm factory into old age. The female ovum factory has a hard stop at 50. Boom.
An excellent, comprehensive summary. This raises an important question, though, and it is something I want to leave you, the listener, to ponder long after we finish today.
What's the final thought?
Think about the sheer terrifying precision required for this system to work. We just mapped out a highly coordinated, multi-stage process that requires geographical relocation, genetic fusion, and profound cellular transformation.
It's a miracle it works at all.
If just one invisible biological signal is delayed, if the developmental timing between the zygote forming and the blastocyst attaching is off by just a microscopic fraction, or if the uterine wall isn't perfectly prepared at the exact moment the blastocyst arrives, the entire sequence halts and the process fails.
The stakes are so high.
As you continue to study these systems, don't just passively memorize the terms. Look at the empty spaces between the words in the textbook. Ask yourself, what are the invisible hormonal clocks, the chemical signals, and the cellular triggers ensuring this relay race never drops the baton?
It's the silent conductors of the orchestra.
What are the unseen underlying mechanisms that govern this flawless sequence? Because understanding that invisible choreography is where the true mastery of biology begins.